Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode here. I'm just going to do a quick episode here talking about one of my favorite albums of all time, what I consider to be one of the most prominent, important albums in progressive rock, honestly, that to me is one of the most influential in terms of creating a wealth of concept albums that have come after it and been inspired by it. And of course I'm talking about Genesis and their record The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And I'm talking about this because of this great new 50th Anniversary Deluxe Edition release, which I decided to pick up and was pretty excited to open up and get into and dive into the contents of this. And it's really immersed me back into the world of this album. And it's one of the most important albums in my journey as a prog rock fan. So I wanted to touch on it, get into the package a little bit here, and just talk about the album in general, basically, and my experience with it, because it's such an important album that I feel is worth spending an episode on. So here we go. First off, a little bit of a show and tell. I'll show off the packaging itself. I just got the box set that features the CD edition. I believe there's also vinyl that exists. But when it comes to these new reissues, I like getting the CD version because I feel like they usually come with the Atmos makes and the different 5.1 and all that kind of stuff. And that's really what I'm curious about. I've heard the record in its original form plenty of times. I have the original version on vinyl and on CD already, but mostly I was getting this to hear kind of the remastering, to hear the Dolby Atmos makes, and to just celebrate one of my favorite albums with a cool packaging. And this has ticked all those boxes pretty fantastically well. Inside, we've got, of course, the different sections of it here. This one features the CDs, both the album proper and the live discs as well for a live show. I'm not as much into the live CDs, honestly, the live albums. I feel like I much usually prefer the studio recordings. There are some exceptions, some fantastic live albums, but when I'm going to reach for The Lamb, I'm going to reach for the original studio recording, not the live version that they did. But I'm fascinated by it and interested in the whole production and everything that they put into their live performances. So that is a cool aspect of it. And this is the other piece of the equation here with a lot of memorabilia, tour program, poster, that kind of stuff. And then it came with a download card, which I already pulled out and got my download. And then this is the pristine the Blu-ray side of the equation that features that Dolby Atmos makes that I'm mentioning and all of that stuff. So that's what I was excited to dive into with this release. And then it also comes with a cool booklet as well, with all kinds of pictures of the band at that time, and of course a long description of the album and the creation of it and the history of it and all that kind of stuff, which I loved. As soon as I got this, the first thing I did was pop in the Atmos makes, pop it into my home theater system, pull out this booklet and play the album and read through every detail of this booklet as I listen to the record. That's kind of my tradition with these types of releases. So that was a lot of fun of an experience. And I just adore and love this album. I always have, and I think it's a very special one. When I was young, when I was a teenager, my dad saw that I was getting into music, and I was into alternative rock of the era of the late 90s, early 2000s. And my dad is a huge fan of a few notable prog rock bands. His favorite bands are Yes, Genesis, and Gentle Giant. So he started sharing that music with me, and we'd go on car rides. It was back when I was basically learning how to drive, and he'd let me drive, and we'd play these albums in the car, and I'd be listening to them and really falling in love with this music. And The Lamb was kind of a special one because it's one my dad holds in really high esteem, and we listened through the Genesis records chronologically, at least starting with Nursery Crime, going into Foxtrot, going into Selling England. And The Lamb was kind of one of the big moments that my dad was building up towards, and talking about how it's a concept and how it's a story and there's a lot to it, and it's extra like long and has like double the length of some of their other records. And so I was really enticed by this. I wasn't too familiar at the time with concept records and how albums could tell these long, sprawling stories. So I was really enthralled with the idea. Even though, even to this day, the storyline is a bit out there for me. I've even read, the Peter Gabriel penned story that he wrote, which is just kind of crazy. And, it's hard to really understand the interpretation of all the different things that are going on, and it's pretty out there for me. But I really respect a band trying something really creative, and I love stories. One of my other passions from music is books, and specifically fantasy and sci-fi literature. I'm a big fan of these expansive stories that are extremely creative and take you to different worlds. And to hear that done with music was just a mind-blowing experience at the time. Even if the story is a little bit strange and out there, and maybe not all of the little tricks and nuances work completely well on the record, but the experience was just mind-blowing to hear that for the first time and just be enthralled with that aspect of it. The storytelling married with this wonderful music that was expressive and expansive. And that's one of the reasons why I love progressive rock, because it's a great venue to tell stories, because you can be a bit more creative and experimental with the music. You don't just stick within these like very set, structured 3-minute pop songs to try to tell this expansive story with. And I think it works fantastically well. It's a perfect marriage of music and story coming to fruition. And I think Genesis kind of laid the groundwork for that in a lot of ways. I know there's other big concept records that came out before this, Tommy by The Who, Moody Blues, Days of Future Past, all these big seminal records coming out around this time. But I feel like this one really, really dug its claws into people, into this progressive scene at the time, and sparked a lot of interest in people to create records moving forward, like The Wall by Pink Floyd, like moving forward into Aerion's sprawling sci-fi concept records, to Spock's Beard Snow, I know is heavily influenced by the Lamb, another one of my favorite records. So I think it's incredible. I know a lot of people talk about it like it's very flawed. Maybe it doesn't completely work 100% of the time. Maybe the second disc is a little bit weaker, perhaps, compared to, the second half of the album compared to the first half of the album. And could you pick apart and like take out things that, maybe don't need to be there, or could be shortened, or, updated, whatever. One of the things I like about concept records is that they kind of have these quirky imperfections. Like, I think that's almost a selling point of the record. You have to take those little nitpicky oddities with all of the great stuff that comes with it, and it gives the album more character. And that's why I love it so much, and would always cite it as my favorite Genesis record, because even though technically maybe the music of like Selling England by the Pound, or even like Trick of the Tail, is technically better, and the songs, like if I was making a compilation of the very best of Genesis, very few of the Lamb songs would be on it. But as a full-on experience, quirks and all, it's just such a great expression of creativity, and Peter Gabriel just like putting his whole heart out there and just exposing his chaotic, crazy, but creative brain to the world. And the ambition speaks to me. Same reason why I really love Yes's Tales from Topographic Oceans as one of my favorite Yes records, where a lot of people don't get it, think it's overblown and pretentious and all of that stuff. But part of what makes it magical is the flaws, is the fact that they decided to really go for something different, to expand these pieces into these special places that music hadn't gone yet. And even though that can be considered pretentious, even though that comes with its own risks to alienate some of their audience, I think they should be rewarded for such ambition. And I think this was a very ambitious record, and it works on every level for me, and I will cherish it. Even the little odd parts that in isolation I don't really care for, like the waiting room or something like that, but when you put it into the whole context of the record, it's an important piece of it. And it's really something that needs to be taken as a whole experience. And that's what's magical about this record and about a lot of these other records that, like Tales from Topographic Oceans, The Wall, these seminal records. You can pull out little songs and clips and pieces, but it's never the same as taking the full experience to heart. That's really the only way you can listen to these records, is as the full experience, as the artist intended. And to me, that makes it even more special, you know, rather than just a collection of disparate songs that can be taken out of context, put on a playlist, listen to on the radio or whatever. This is an album you have to listen to start to finish. You can't just pull out a certain amount of tracks and listen to it on its own to get. You could, obviously, but it just wouldn't give you the same experience that the band was really going for, and that they took on to tour and made this into a big live show as well. And it was cool reading in here about all of the work that took and everything they put into this record. It's fascinating to me that these records exist and that these young people were able to have the ability to put this stuff together and have this endless creativity that was widely received well by a lot of people. You know, nowadays it's kind of a niche thing that certain people do, but it's not really known out in the public. These more creative, ambitious records that I at least look at and talk about. But I really wish I was around at the time of these records where they were actually popular and this was actually important music at the time. But I just wanted to say that it's one of my favorite records of all time. I know a lot of people quibble with some of the parts of it that don't work for them, but for me, that's part of the charm. And I will always cite this as my favorite Genesis record because of that mind-blowing moment as a young teenager and my dad showing this to me and it just unlocking something in my brain that has made me go on to try to find music like this and has created me into the prog fan that I am today. So I'm grateful for the record, grateful for the experience listening to it. I will admit that I wasn't as blown away by the Atmos mix as I was hoping to be. I've been blown away by some of the Yes Atmos mixes that I've been listening to, particularly the Yes album and Fragile. I'm working my way up to Close to the Edge soon. And I have been really impressed with how immersive they feel and how incredible it is. This one had moments that were really excellent and I really enjoyed. I think part of it was my system setup was a little bit wonky to start and I had to take some time to fiddle with it to get it sounding right. But certain things just sounded a little off to me. The vocals didn't sound like balanced quite correctly. And like I said, that could be my system, but I think partially it was just the mix wasn't quite what I was expecting as a listener. And sometimes that's the danger with these like Atmos mixes or remastering or remixing something, is it can take away from the experience you had originally with it. Like it can change things that your brain like is looking for. You know, you expect this kind of interesting section to sound a certain way, and even if it's slightly different, like it just kind of surprises me, and not necessarily always in a great way. Sometimes it's pleasant surprise. Sometimes it like opens something up that like, oh, I'm hearing this in a new way that I hadn't heard before. This is really fun. I don't get too precious about like people shouldn't touch this material. They shouldn't change it. It should just be in its purest form. Like we have the original Lamb Lies Down on Broadway that you can always go back and listen to. So it's okay that they're tweaking things a little bit to try to improve the sound quality and to bring out new things that you may not have heard before. I think that's cool, but you know, whether it's successful in this case in particular, I probably need to give it some more time and listen to it a few more times. But at the very least, it's been a great experience because it's reminded me of the love that I have for this record and for prog concept records in general, and just how fun it's been to rediscover this. So I'm grateful for this anniversary release. Glad I picked it up, and hopefully you guys are enjoying it if you have it, or are considering picking it up if you would like to. That would be awesome. So thank you guys. Let me know your thoughts about the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway in the comments, whether you love it like I do, whether you think it's one of their weaker records, or you're somewhere in between. I'd be curious to know your thoughts. So thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully you appreciated this episode, and I'll catch you guys in a future one. Thank you. Bye everybody. Enjoy the music.